Everyone to this very special ET Rise webinar. It's just about 100 days since we first heard of a virus which was causing pneumonia-like problems. And within this 100 days or more, much of the world has come to a standstill. Around 4 billion or more people are in some form of lockdown. And increasingly, the world looks like it's in a difficult place. Uh, but the lockdowns would be over one day, and we will not need to go back to our work and our offices. And that is one thing that we need to now prepare for. Uh, so, given the nature of the pandemic, businesses will be very different from now onwards. And as we prepare for a lockdown to be lifted, we would need to tune our businesses in a manner which takes into account our current situation. To discuss this and more today, we have with us Ryan Lowe, Partner, People Advisory Services, EY India, and Kanika Tekrawal, Founder and CEO, JetSitGo, to talk about this entire situation and how we can prepare. So, coming first to you, Ryan, what is your sense of how the world would be when the lockdown gets lifted in India?
Thank you, Pran. I think that's really the $1 million question. All of us are really wondering what the new normal is going to look like. But of course, I think we are now gradually moving towards that path where even though the overall lockdown has been extended until the end of April, there will be a gradual phased removal of the lockdown for some sectors and parts of the economy. I think the government has no real alternative. They're going to have to focus on both lives and livelihood, and hence, the need for this. I think the biggest challenge that businesses are going to face is the challenge of restarting their operations, even while a larger part of the enabling ecosystem continues to be in lockdown. So public transportation, etc., is likely to continue to be in lockdown. In that, within the constraints of what we are allowed to do, we are going to have to ensure that we get our businesses back on track. And I think that is going to pose the biggest challenge for businessmen.
Right. Kanika, what are your initial views? What is the post-lockdown India going to look like? Kanika, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that, yeah. So, personally speaking, from what I'm seeing happen around me, speaking to, our own team members, speaking to others, what my primary learning is going to be that people are going to come back very, very differently. It's not going to be the same human being you left in the pre-lockdown world that's going to return in the post-lockdown world. So I think we're going to see, like Ryan said, a very gradual, opening up of the world. At the same time, you're going to see very changed people who need to be handled very differently. You're going to see a lot of compassion. You're going to see a lot of humanitarian requirements to deal with teams, and I don't think life's going to be the same ever again, right? And I think it's going to be businesses who are a lot more compassionate, a lot more humane who will win, as against, it's not going to be performance that really drives what's going to go forward. It's going to be about how do you keep these teams together? How do you open your office in a phased manner? How do you maintain social distancing? How do you manage your costs in the same way you were earlier with your offices not functioning at full capacity? How do you make work from home a way of life? So, I think we're going to see a very changed world, and in the changed world, we're going to see very, very changed people. Yeah.
Right. Kanika, if I could stay with you, yours was one business among others where your business has stayed operation even during the lockdown period. So, how difficult was this period for you to work, and what are the kind of changes that you need to make in order to operate during this lockdown?
I think luckily for us, the team came together very, very beautifully. No one ever no one ever found problems, but people worked together collectively to find solutions. However, at the same time, keeping teams motivated, looking after their safety, making sure they got to work safe, very basic things that we took for granted earlier were now so much more, fragile, so much more complicated. Like I was personally keeping track of every single member getting from home to the airport, from the airport back to home. So I think, it's been very, very challenging operationally, I would say. And like, I always joke with my team every day that what it takes us to do one flight today used to be the equal amount of work of 50 flights earlier. So, there's a lot of learning that's come out for us currently. But like I said, there's no guidebook to this. So we're all learning from it, we're all going forward. And we're all working on, how do we make sure that your workplace is safe? And it's unfortunately for us, we don't work in a constrained environment where you can restrict outsider, movement, where you can restrict staff interaction with outsiders, because we're consistently carrying cargo, we're consistently carrying passengers. So I think, as we speak each and every day, we're developing our own SOPs, we're developing our own processes, discovering new processes to ensure that, we can sanitize aircrafts, we can sanitize office spaces. How do people handle people? So yeah, it's a constant learning process, and I don't think we'll have the answer for it anytime soon. There's no firm guidebook available immediately for it.
Right. Right, I can come to you. There are two aspects to things. One would be operations for offices, and then would be operations for manufacturing unit. So we'll deal both of them differently. And let's come to offices first. How does one plan to open offices when lockdown gets over? Should it be the case that all your employees just flood into the office just because the lockdown is over?
Yeah, I think the government will have a big say in that as well, Pran. So they are going to allow for the relaxation of the lockdown in a phased manner. So we are going to have to really go through a series of steps to ensure that we are complying with those government notifications and guidelines, while at the same time ensuring that our people are safe and are able to be productive as well. Because at the end of the day, we have to run a business. So I think a couple of steps. The first step is really a very detailed planning activity, wherein we need to identify which are the roles and which are the employees who really need to come into work even after the lockdown is lifted. If there are roles and employees who can continue to work from home, I think we should, in all fairness, allow that to happen. But so first thing is identifying who specifically needs to come into office. The second aspect is ensuring that these people are able to come into office. So enabling transportation, ensuring that they're safe while commuting. And then at the offices itself, we will have to create a series of checkpoints whereby we do, the testing at the right times and with the right frequency. We have holding areas. We work with our property management, colleagues to ensure that there are holding areas for people who, to kind of raise the red flag with higher temperatures. And then within the office itself, I think we're going to have to ensure that there is no crowding. We actually remove the number of chairs that are available in our office spaces to ensure that only 25 or 50% of the workspace is actually occupied. And similarly, I think a similar set of actions need to be done with our support staff. So security guards, receptionists, the cafeteria staff. Do we really need all of them to come into work? Maybe in the beginning, possibly not. So we've got to take a very, very sequential and well thought through effort to ensure that while we open up our offices, there is absolutely, we minimize the impact on employee well-being and safety.
Right. So, Kanika, if I can come to you, what are some of the things that you did during the lockdown to ensure that your staff is safe, plus your operations continue? And you did talk about that. It required much more effort. But what are some of the maybe the simple things that you needed to do?
Pran, if I had to I can go on about it, but if I had to like list the top 5 simplest measures that we took, to start with, we controlled all transport, from each staff member's house till the office space or till the airport. I know it's not easy for most businesses, but we set up our own vehicles. We ensured the vehicles were sanitized, the drivers were tested before they went to pick them up, before they went to drop them. The second check post we created was we actually got a paramedic to test every single person coming into work twice a day. And we did shifts in a manner that we ensured the same person was not at work for a long period of time. So there were 5 5 hour rotational shifts that went on. Then we got a company to come in and do sanitization of the offices thrice a day. We discovered new ways to sanitize the aircrafts again, because they can be a holding point for germs. Then we we made washing of hands fun, like a way of life rather than a way of something that's required to be done. Because you also have to understand, in a business like ours, there's not only your manpower doesn't consist of only educated and highly paid people. It also consists of a lot of people who are baggage handlers, baggage loaders, etc., who may not understand normal communication. So we came up with exercises in communication that was easy to understand, that also explained to them, what the importance of simple things like washing hands, wearing masks was. I didn't want to personally go out and buy PPEs, because our paramedics are already running short of them, our doctors are running short of them. But we made sure that clothing worn was washed again and again, clean. You didn't use the same clothing you use at work anywhere else. Then I think the other thing we were very, very particular about was that, there was no, show a lot of compassion, I think. That was one thing we learned the hard way. So whilst we didn't, you know, impress upon people to make it to work, we made it a voluntary system. While there was a flight board, while there was services required, we asked people to come forward and say who wants to fly, who wants to come to the airport. And if someone said no, we respected that. There was no antagonizing of anyone who said, oh, I'm scared to fly or I'm scared to come to work. Fine, you don't want to come to work. You're scared, it's all right. You're nervous, it's all right. Then I would go ahead, have a chat with them, understand what they're going through. Because what we have to understand is it's not only the individual who's scared, there's a whole ecosystem at the back end around the individual, which consists of their families. These families could be very young children, they could be very old parents, in-laws, etc. Then there is a larger ecosystem of the building or the society or the colony they live in. Again, there are hindrances over there where people say, oh, if you're stepping out, don't come back home. So the other step we've taken now is we've created accommodation for a lot of our staff close to the place of work, so that they don't have to go back home, so that they don't have to antagonize their family, they don't have to, scare people around them. So, some of them can be very, very capital intensive also, but these are the few steps we've taken as of now, which will consistently evolve, of course.
Right. And also, it seems like inherently your work processes will slow down, right, Kanika? It seems like that.
Sorry?
Inherently, your work processes will slow down, because if you're
Oh,
talking about
absolutely.
sanitizing the workspace 3 times a day and stuff like that, there is going to be time needed for that.
Absolutely. Pran, so what I'm seeing happen is that one is work processes are slowing down, and yes, the amount of money you're spending is increasing dramatically. So, at the same time, your sales have gone drastically down. We're only doing emergency work. So, we're only doing about 2% of the sales we would normally do. However, it's taking double the cost to deliver the product, and more manpower. So, this is going to be a vicious cycle which is going to continue for some time from what I see.
Right. Uh, Ryan, if I can come to you. In the meantime, Kanika, I think there's some echo in your microphone. So I think time I come to you, probably you can put it on
I'm
mute
going
or
to try to
pause.
fix that for you. Yeah.
Thanks. So Ryan, if I can come to you, Kanika talked about how things are taking much longer. In that sense, how do organizations? It might be easier for a smaller organization, but how do you plan that when you are a say 100 employee company, 150 employee company, or for a mid-sized firm? Uh, can the same mantra work for companies irrespective of their size?
Well, I think certain things are non-negotiable. So every organization, irrespective of its size, will have to do it. So by that I mean, the part about employee testing, having a doctor available, sanitizing of the workplace. Some of those things, having the PPEs available and used at all times when the person is back at work. So I think those are non-negotiables. I think every organization, irrespective of size, will have to do it. There will be other elements that are easier for a smaller company. but I think could pose significant challenges for a large company. And in these, I would include things like being in complete control of transportation. So I don't think a larger organization will be able to assume control of the commute for every individual between their workplace and home. I don't think it's possible at all. Similarly, possibly putting up people, closer to the workplace, so accommodating them in guest houses or in other accommodation. Again, that's going to pose a very, very significant financial strain on a lot of organizations if they do decide to go down that route. And in today's day and age, that will be difficult to do. So there will have to be a slightly different set of solutions that each organization arrives at, given its size, scale, and its own unique set of challenges that it would face. But yes, in terms of the bare minimum, the necessities that will have to happen, and there's no way out of that. So I think there will be a reduction of pace of operations. That's where the focus has to be on enabling work from home wherever possible, so that it's just a proportion of the employees that are impacted, the ones who are actually commuting to work. Even when we open up, as I said earlier, not everyone will be allowed into office at the same time. You will have to create rosters whereby teams come in at certain times during the day, complete their pieces of work, and then head out. So all of those will have to be taken into consideration and planned out so that we are able to manage this for slightly larger scale organizations.
Right. Staying with you, if uh, one of the hallmarks of the way we conduct our office now is stuff like hot desk and open offices. How much of that do you think will be impacted?
Well, hot desks for sure are going to be a challenging proposition going forward. Uh, Again, the way to manage it will have to be to have different, almost shift timings even in our offices, so that the same infrastructure, if that is a constraint, can be used by different sets of people with some level of sanitization in between. Uh, Open offices, I don't think are a problem. I honestly, I'd rather sit in an open office than a cabin with somebody across the table for me. So I don't think open offices would be a problem. But yes, there is going to be an overall strain on the infrastructure. At the same time, those organizations that are able to, move to more permissive work from home type of setups could, in the medium to long term, actually save up on office space as well, because there will be probably an opportunity to relook at the footprint of square footage that you have, for your offices. If you find that a lot of your processes can get moved to home, or can get equally well delivered from home, then maybe you could relook at the number of people that you need to have in office at any given point of time, and hence renegotiate some of your leases.
Right. So what can be those essential functions that officers can try and figure out? We'll stick with you, Ryan, because Kanika is still trying to figure out her audio. This keeps happening. So yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that probably officers will also have to take into account, that if only teams are working in office and the rest of it at home, there will be tech challenges as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think this has accelerated the adoption of tech across organizations. This entire pandemic, we've been forced to do it, and we've been forced to do it very, very quickly. So I think that is, if anything, a plus. If you are to look at the silver lining, there has been significant adoption on tech. But of course, it will, in order to do this for over a longer, more permanent, period, I think we will have to also train our people in terms of what works best in terms of work from home. What are the ways to manage teams remotely, virtually? How do you enable productivity while working from home? So those are some of the areas, some of the softer aspects of work from home that we will have to train our people on. At the same time, as you mentioned, ensuring that the tech is up and running is extremely important. What we've seen at EY, in fact, is that a significant upswing in the number of phishing emails, in some cybersecurity attacks, etc., that some of our sites have been subjected to. So I think that's something that organizations will also have to take a strong view on and ensure that their systems are secure to enable a large part of the work to be delivered from home.
Right. So, in terms of, I basically uh, touched on this question some time back. What will constitute essential teams coming back to office, and what will be non-essential according to you, continue to function out of home?
Right. I think we'll have to take a function by function view of this. There would be some functions that are more amenable to work from home. So, there could be some support functions like your HR, finance, legal, etc., that could actually work from home. There could be some sales teams where they don't necessarily need to come into office and who are enabled by technology to actually work from home and then work the market directly. So we already have a lot of organizations who work through what are called virtual offices. So I think that will continue, and probably that trend will accelerate as we go forward. So whatever doesn't need access to physical infrastructure of office is something that we would have to look at. There are obviously some elements which are led by data security considerations, etc., which need to be conducted on the on premise. So I think those are the jobs that will continue to require commuting to office. But again, a lot of the support service roles can be looked at from a work from home perspective. There, in my view, there is also going to be a likelihood of organizations relooking at the opportunity to outsource some of these functions as well, at least the transactional pieces of the work in support functions.
Right. So, Kanika, if I can come to you, uh, I think during the lockdown there would have been some, most basic problems, which would include things like where do people eat because everything is shut. Although that will not be the condition probably once the lockdown gets over, but things like cafeteria and even getting food, that might need a rethink from the office side, right?
I think, Pran, it's going to be a whole lifestyle change, overall. I mean, we're going to change the way we live going forward. To give you a simple example, today when our staff goes to the airport, and if they're doing a 6-hour shift or a 5-hour shift, there is no food available for them to eat, right? Or if our pilots are flying for 7-8 hours throughout the day, even if there's food available to eat anywhere, we can't take the risk right now of exposing them to any of that. So we're actually having pilots carry food from home. We're having staff carry food from home. All our public areas, in terms of going forward, the common areas where meeting areas, the cafeteria, etc., they're all going to have to be closed for the longest time, from what I see. All the recreational areas, etc. And in fact, I think even on board our aircrafts, the food we serve, the water we serve, everything's going to change. It's not, you probably cannot continue the same way that we have been all this while.
Right. So, I am just going through some of the questions. So, someone has asked, how did you sanitize your computers, laptops, and your office space? So, Kanika, how did you do that?
So actually, there's a very cool machine that's available. It's almost like a gun, if I can say that, in which we're using this particular liquid, which is basically an alcohol-based liquid that is sprayed all across. I really don't know how it's decreasing the life of all the hardware in the office. That only time will tell. So far, everything's functioning, and like I said, there's no guidebook to the situation, so we're all writing it, right? So yeah, so I mean, I'm sure in the longer term, companies will come out with solutions. But for now, we're using just normal sanitization liquid and spraying it all across and wiping it. Yeah.
Okay, right. So, it's a normal sanitizer that you're using.
It's not the normal sanitizer, but I think it's I'm forgetting the chemical's name, which is the base of the sanitizer, but it doesn't
Okay,
have that much glycerin in it, because
okay,
glycerin is what used primarily for our hands and skin. Yeah.
okay, great. So, Ryan, if I can come to you, while we talked about one part of it, the offices, one question that I get uh, from our readers is that, what do you do if you're a manufacturing company? You don't have the luxury of working from home. You can't let your employees work from home there. So what happens in that case?
Absolutely. That's certainly one part of the business that you cannot work from home. You've got to be there on site at your production facilities to ensure that, output is happening. And that's where there is going to be a significant challenge. Many organizations have already started kind of addressing it in some ways. So there have been some essential goods that have been in production during the course of this lockdown. So I think it's a great opportunity to learn from their experiences as well. But I think there are a few steps here again that we will have to take. So first is to identify the specific and the bare minimum number of people whom are required on the shop floor at any given point of time. So so identifying, and this has to be across three categories of your workforce. So the officers, the blue collar workforce, and your contract labor as well. So each of them typically does a separate set of tasks. So you need to have adequate number of all three categories available on the shop floor. And if the government says you can only work up to 25% of your capacity, then you plan for that number first. The second important aspect is really getting those people onto the site. We've all seen the mass migration that has happened with a lot of our contract workforce moving back to their villages, especially those who've been out of jobs. So extremely difficult to get that reversal to happen quickly. So I think we've got to work with contractors who are able to help you deploy locals onto the plant. There is a retraining and a reskilling issue that is going to be required at that stage, but again, no option. You've got to do it. I think another two or three critical elements that we need to look at are actually looking at the rostering of shifts. So create these lean shift crews who will come in, operate for the period of time, and then exit without interacting with any other employees on site or the next shift. So earlier in many manufacturing organizations, there's a shift handover process that happens, whereby one shift kind of downloads the current status to the next shift and then they move on from there. Now you can't do that because that's a risk. If there is one person in a shift crew who is infected, the entire set of people that he or she comes in contact with need to be quarantined. So you've got to ensure that there is minimal overlap and minimal interaction between these crews, to ensure that that risk is minimized. You can look at increasing the shift timing. You've got a set of people in there, let them maximize, pay them overtime for that period. So there are cost implications, of course, but you've got to ensure that, the people that you have are as productive and the assets that you have are as productive. Another thing that I've seen organizations doing is actually moving critical resources on site. So get them to move into guest houses on site or into some accommodation camps as close to the point of production, the shop floor, as possible. Because again, I think Kanika talked about it earlier, that there's this entire piece about housing societies, village panchayats not allowing people to come in and go out. So you've got to ensure that you get these people on board, speak to them, work with the government to allow for the passes, and to get the district collectors to communicate that these people are required for production. Please allow them to move in and out. So some of those issues are extremely important. Besides, of course, the entire piece around the testing protocols again, and managing crisis if it does happen. If somebody's infected, what are the protocols that you need to do? So those are some of the key things that we've seen work with manufacturing firms to trying to get operations restarted on the shop floor.
Right. So there is a quick poll that we'll run on the screen before I get to Kanika for the next question. Please choose one of the options in the poll question that we'll have, and it should be up on your screens now. Kanika, coming to you, how much of a human resource or a HR point of from that point, how much of change does an organization need? Uh, I mean, for example, some organizations will have a sick leave of say 10 days, but the kind of problem that we see now, do you think it also mandates a relook at how our HR functions are?
Absolutely, Pran. I think it's HR is going to be rewritten again, all over again, and in a lot of traditional Indian SMEs, MSMEs, family-run businesses, HR was never a key component in the business. HR was considered a payroll processing center or a leave and a you get what I'm saying, right? More admin based setup, especially in smaller businesses. And that's going to change dramatically because, you're going to have HR improve employee morale every single day, motivate people to turn up to work. Just to give you a simple example, I was speaking to someone yesterday, and they come under essential goods, and they're allowed to function to at least 60% of their capacity right now. But their employees don't want to turn up because they say, if the prime minister's promised that we're going to be paid sitting at home, why should we come to work? And now it's going to take, and these are not very educated people, these are not highly paid employees. So it's going to take a all new type of HR to sit and explain to them as to what is the role they play in our economy. What is the role they play in propelling the nation out of this crisis? What is an essential good? Why are they required to come to work? So you're going to require HR at every level of the business now. And I would think that HR will be required more to handle, shop floor staff, laborers, workers, machinery handlers than the senior management, because these are the people who really need to be brought back to work. Like Ryan said, reskilling is going to be important, but how do you motivate them to understand that, look, you've got to change the way you work. You can't handle that machine the way you used to handle it. You can't not wear gloves. Our Indian environment and climate is not the most conducive. Can you imagine people wearing gloves and PPE suits and masks and all of that and refusing to work because it's humanly not possible? So then you've got to create more infrastructure around that, be it air conditioning or be it cooling units, etc., etc. So, and I think a lot of people, like I said, are going to come back very scarred. We don't know what sort of violence they've been, prone to at home. We don't know what living alone has done to them. Not everyone lives with families. So, they're going to come back with a lot of mental health issues, which again are not very commonly addressed in India. So that's where again HR comes in. You can't for the next 6 months expect employees to perform to 100% output, or rule them with a stick. You've got to be able to understand what they're going through, be very compassionate, and HR has got to consistently keep doing exercises, keep working with teams to basically figure out what is it they can do to make their lives better. HR no longer can be a payroll and leave processing system.
Right. Right. Uh, your thoughts on this, plus the fact that uh, there is a real chance with the virus being around that one of your employees may get infected once the lockdown gets over, once there is some semblance of normalcy. In that case, how does a company move in to handle a situation like this? And again, the critical role of HR.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it is certainly a very, very real scenario that most of us are likely to face, at some point of time once the lockdown is shifted. So we've got to prepare for it upfront. I think it's and that's why a lot of what I was suggesting earlier was about how do you minimize that risk. But even despite all of that, if somebody does get infected, you've got to move very, very quickly. You've got to have your protocols in place. You've got to know that, okay, the first thing that I do when I figure that somebody is infected is to really try and trace back who were the others that this person was interacting with over the last few days. And it's not always easy to do, and therefore the better you control entry and exit into your premises, whether it's an office or a production setup, the better you will be able to respond to some of these challenges. I think the next aspect is to see that, okay, I think Kanika made a very, very important point about the entire mental well-being of people. Because the moment you hear of somebody who's been in your office who has been infected, that will lead to a lot of anxiety among the rest. You've got to be able to communicate to them, the specific next steps that we are going to be putting in place. How do they get tested over a period of time as soon as possible? How they need to be quarantined, at home, stay away from work, stay away from family, if possible, for the next 14 days. And at the same time, be empathetic. I think extremely important to show a lot of empathy at this point of time. HR has to take the lead in that. They've got to kind of work with the person who's infected and their family, and at the same time, provide assurances to the rest of the staff working there, so that we can basically tell them that we're on top of the situation. We know what it is to be done by each of us as next steps, and execute seamlessly. I think therefore the planning piece, these couple of weeks before we go into a fully open, hopefully by 1st of May we will open up more organizations. This is the time to be spent planning out those protocols and planning out your crisis management plan in for this eventuality, because it will happen.
And in every case, there would be a significant increase in expenses, right?
I think that is something that it's going to be a double whammy. So on the one side, we've got demand that has tanked for most of our businesses. On the other side, we're going to have a significant spike in costs. So whatever Kanika spoke about, the transportation, the accommodation, the sanitization, all of this is additional cost to what we used to do earlier. And and of course, if something like this does happen, if you do get an infection in office, that means even additional cost. So yes, it is going to be a double whammy, but you've got to plan for it. You've got to ensure that business continuity is not impacted. So what some organizations are also doing is to identify satellite offices, where you can have smaller groups of people operate out of, so that the larger group isn't kind of directly at risk in case somebody gets infected. So those are some of the thought processes you need to put in place, and HR needs to be at the forefront of thinking this through together with the leadership team.
Right. Kanika, I would presume you have the protocols in place in case there is a infection in, God forbid, in one of your team members, and how you will go about it.
Well, you have to. I mean, at this stage, there's no other choice. But like I said, there's no blue book for the protocol right now. What we've done is we've seen and learned what is happening globally, and we've tried to implement and learn from that. And luckily for us, we've got a lot of international regulatory bodies that regulate our industry. So we've learned from what the Federal Aviation Administration and what the European Aviation Administration have advised and created those. So I mean, so far we've had no such issue, but God forbid when it does happen, I think we are prepared for it. Yeah.
Right. So let's go to some of the questions that have come in. Uh, the first question says, okay, so it doesn't really pertain to what we are discussing today, but it's a question that has been recurring. So I mean, probably you guys might want to, you know, touch this topic. It talks about, how do you manage paying salaries, and most of people have paid the salary for March, but they do not know how to go about in April, and also most of them are pretty worried about cash flows. So, Ryan, do you want to go first? Any views? Although this is not, you know, directly related to what we are discussing today.
Yeah, a really tough one. And I'm sure there are a lot of businesses in Stripe who are facing this problem. I honestly think that if you don't have money, there's extremely little that you can do. You've got to communicate to your employees about the problem. You've got to be upfront. I think employees also do understand when businesses are in strife. Many employees are willing to kind of work with the employer to look at a reduction in salary for the interim period, or a deferment as well. And my view is that you've got to do this in reverse hierarchy order. So you've got to ensure that the top of the pyramid gets a bigger hit if you do need to go down that route, and so that the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid are protected to the extent possible. So deferments, some amount of reductions, maybe some amount of variabilization as well. So you again, it's about communication. Get the people on board. Get HR to work with people to say that, okay, a more significant proportion of the salary package is going to be variabilized and will be paid out when things improve. So these are a couple of things that I can think of, because at the end of the day, if you don't have money, there's very little you can do.
So, Kanika, how are you dealing with the situation?
I think, Prant, this is a very real concern. And we're the only country in the world, I think, who has regulation in place where You have to pay salaries irrespective of whether your businesses are working or not. Unlike America and Europe where you've seen mass layoffs, etc. So, I think my personal take on this is that we're all in it together, at the end of the day. And this is the first time in my life at least that, all of us have been equalized onto one single platform where everyone's suffering the same problem. So I see no reason for your teams not to understand and support you. But what we do need to take into account as promoters and as leaders today is that you've got to be very, very compassionate towards your teams and not do this in isolation. There is no harm in standing up to your team and saying, look, we don't have the cash flows to support salary today, or look, we don't have sales, so we don't have money in the bank today. Don't you? I see a lot of businesses using this as an opportunity to oust their team members, or give pay cuts which are not really required, or not pay vendors, just planning for 6 months down the line. I don't think those are businesses that will survive or that will attract the right human talent, which is what's going to be critical in this crisis. So I think if you're honest, committed, and you communicate with your teams with integrity, I see no reason why people will not work for you without pay for a couple of months also. Ultimately, every single stakeholder in your business is going through what you're going through. And if you can transparently and honestly communicate your problems to them, I see a lot of people, willing to take the fall. And the other thing I think is that's very important right now at this stage is don't make salary cuts permanent. We don't know how the world's going to change in 2 or 3 months. So don't put that fear in people's heads that, okay, I'm cutting your salary by 40% or 30%. I think deferment is the right word that Ryan used. Set goals, set targets, and be very transparent that, look, when we come back to 80% sales, your salaries will come back to this. And when we come back to 100%, your salaries will come back to this. And if we cross our targets and if we go even higher, you know what? All that pay that you guys lost during these months will be paid back to you. So give them some motivation. Explain to them that you're aligned with their well-being, and that's what matters to you the most. And I think most businesses will win over.
Right. One of the other questions which has come across is how do salespeople go about their job? Their by their work includes meeting people and face-to-face uh, interaction. So what happens in the sales function? So Ryan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it's tough, but again, I do see a lot of opportunity for salespeople to also use these difficult times, to connect with some of their customers. And they can do that virtually as well. So we've seen a lot of organizations where, as I was saying earlier as well, they're used to it. So some industries are more amenable to this than others, while others are going to have a big problem. So if you look at a pharma company, a medical rep cannot access a doctor at this stage. There's no question. There is no way a doctor is going to want to, get onto a call with an MR. So yes, it is a sectoral cut to this answer. But wherever possible, if you are able to connect virtually with your customers, I don't think you should look at it necessarily as a time to hard sell. You've got to show support and empathy and kind of be able to provide insights in terms of what they can do to manage their own business better. uh, I think those are the businesses that will do better than others and will come out of this pandemic situation stronger. Because if you try and hard sell, I honestly don't think that there'll be many takers at this point of time, and you'll probably end up harming your relationship with your customer rather than doing anything else.
Right. Kanika, how are you going to go about your sales now?
So, I see this as a big opportunity, to be honest. I mean, this is the best time to cut all your sales costs, right? According to me, we're all going to be rewriting the playbook of doing business now. We're going to rewrite the playbook of doing sales. We're going to rewrite the playbook of managing vendors. And I personally think this is the best time for sales teams to get together and, work virtually, do your sales calls on phone calls, do your sales calls on WebEx and Zoom. And I mean, I'm not endorsing any of these guys, but, use web tools, because how many customers will actually want to meet you at the end of the day? How many customers actually want to meet you once you get on that plane and go to the airport and get off that plane. So I think to me, there's massive opportunity in this. Companies that embrace this open-handedly, come up with solutions, support their sales teams in rewriting the whole sales playbook, will come out very, very victorious. I don't see any reason for sales teams to be even paranoid or scared right now, because all your biz development expenditure goes down dramatically. So that's all the more justification. Everything. I think it's great for sales right now, to be honest.
Right. So I'll stay with you, Kanika. I will club two questions together here, where someone has said that the work from home option is working absolutely fine with him, and he wants to try it on as a pilot for the next 1 or 2 quarters, not months, 1 or 2 quarters. So he wants to know if this is okay and he should go ahead with it. And someone else who's written that, will work from home add another, okay, is work from home and another add-on to the diversity challenge? People have moved from work from office to home. Further, any suggestion? Okay, yeah. So yeah, so basically the question is this another challenge to the diversity issue, the work from home part of it?
Huh?
I am not very sure about that question, but in any case, we talk about the work from home, the first part of it. So
Yeah, sorry, yeah. I think hats off to this guy, whoever has written that, because I think it's a great idea, and that's exactly what all of us need to be doing right now. Figuring out, and see, we're all complaining about costs increasing, right, per person in the office. If you can manage 40% of your team remotely, you've stabilized those costs. You don't need that much more rent space or office space or desk space, etc., etc. So I think it's a great plan. And if you can manage to motivate your team, and if you can manage to set up systems and processes wherein your team comes to the office once a week or twice a week on a rotational basis, shift basis, then you go into the whole world of floating desks. You save so much on various resources altogether. And I think it's a great plan. And I think that's where the world is moving, to be very honest. I was one of these people who hated VCs all the time, and I would run in the opposite direction. And I've had no choice but to embrace it. And I'm sure there are many in the same boat as me.
right, Ryan, do you want to come in?
Yeah,
The work from
I
home.
would totally agree. I think this is the time to innovate. So if the viewer is comfortable with it, it's great. Even if you're not comfortable with it, push yourself to do it. As Kanika said, I think I'm very much in her boat. I used to hate calls and VCs, but there's no option. You've got to do it, and that's the way the world is heading. So if you're able to make it work, I think that's a fantastic. Gives you a fantastic resilience layer to your business, which will hold you, in good stead as you go forward. Because that's the way the world is moving. There's no question about it. And just if I may, also take a shot at the diversity angle. I think if anything, work from home is just going to be a fillip to diversity. Just think about the large workforce, the work. I'm just going to look at gender diversity for now, but it's equally true for other aspects of diversity as well. People who would have trouble commuting to work for whatever reason, whether they've got a kid or they've got they're differently abled or whatever is the challenge. But I think now, if we're able to move towards work from home, make it work for all of us, I think it gives a great opportunity to increase the number of diverse, workforce that we have within our organizations.
Right. So staying with you, Ryan, it's the next question says, will life be the same again? Should we work double to compensate damage during this pandemic or find other ways to compensate the loss? How do we keep our staff motivated?
I think Kanika already said it. Life is going to dramatically change. I think we've got to accept it and we've got to be ready for it. I think the ones who try to put their head into the sand and think that this will go away are severely mistaken. This is a new normal that we are entering, so we've got to ensure how we make it work for us. Now, whether that means working doubly hard or doing things differently, I think each of us will have to make that choice for ourselves. I think for me, the better option is to do things differently, adjust to this new normal, and ensure that you're able to reach out and show empathy with your employees remotely and virtually. I think the organizations that do this better at this point of time, reach out to their teams, employees, ensure their well-being. I think those are the ones that will also emerge with significantly higher employee engagement indices and loyalty from people who have seen how leaders have reached out and made sure of their well-being, even though there were significant challenges.
Kanika, you want to come in?
So, I think a lot of us are still trying to fool ourselves that things can come back to normal. But that's definitely not going to happen. But I think there's a lot of opportunity in this adversity. I think you're going to see great entrepreneurs, you're going to see great new businesses, you're going to see a whole new life altogether, right? It's almost like I keep joking, it's the apocalypse. But what after the apocalypse? So I think people who are going to succeed are people who embrace this change immediately, reinvent themselves, reinvent their ways, reinvent their products altogether. Like, to give a simple example, we're thinking about how do we completely change our product to provide the most personalized and the most personalized form of mobility possible, where you feel safe. So I think everyone's got to embrace this, keep changing, and India, personally, to me, is going to succeed if we take it in our stride and do well.
Right. So, Ryan, probably you can come into this. I'm an MSME owner. How do you suggest we go about making the business continuity plan? What are some of the elements that go into it?
Yeah, so I think business continuity planning is going to cover or needs to encompass all aspects of business. So I think we've been focusing on one aspect so far, which is the people aspect. But I think the most critical aspect is going to be on cash. Cash is going to be king in this crisis. So we've got to ensure somehow, again, easier said than done with demand collapsing. We need to ensure that we've got enough of cash to ride through this crisis. Uh, you've got to consider alternative funding solutions, work with your partners in the supply chain to ensure that you've got cash at the right place at the right time, so that business flows. I talked about cybersecurity, an important element of this, because given the dependence that we're moving into on technology, I think we've got to ensure that our systems work. If our IT systems fail, that's when business continuity will be called into question. I think we've got to also plan for different scenarios. So a lot of scenario planning is going to be required. And in each scenario, the actions that we may be required to take could be very different. So I have a client who has a very seasonal product portfolio. 40 to 50% of their product sales happen in the summer. So that's these 2 months, April and May. Now, given that it's likely to be a very significant washout, they had to move extremely quickly and actually brought in a new product into the market, double quick time, launched it. I'm not going to tell you which product because it'll probably give away the company. But absolutely phenomenal agility was shown by that organization to come in with a product which is absolutely relevant for the current situation that we are in today. So you've got to be agile. You've got to have your plans spanning all these elements: cash, uh, product portfolio, operations, people. All of this put together so that you're able to respond quickly to the scenarios as they present themselves. Because again, we don't know. There's just so much we don't know at this stage. So we've got to be agile. We've got to plan in advance. Otherwise, you'll be caught on the wrong foot.
Kanika, how are you doing your business continuity plan?
You want me to spill all the secret beans, but I think like I said, we're reinventing products, as we speak every single day, and we've actually, I've worked on an exercise where we take feedback from everyone, beginning from the loader, which is the person who loads, bags onto the plane, going up to the CXOs altogether. Why? Because each one of them during this pandemic is interacting with the customer and learning new things. So what we're trying to figure out is, what is the product that the customer most wants now? I mean, while people may say travel is going to decrease, reduce, etc., etc., the need to travel cannot be taken out of human beings at the end of the day. But what can be done is, customers, passengers, guests can be given the travel experience that they most want, that they most feel safe in, and that they feel proud flying at the end of the day. So, without worrying about, okay, what are the next 2 months going to hold? What we're really planning and working on is, how are we going to reinvent this whole world of flying altogether and give the customer a product that doesn't exist yet?
Right. So, staying with you, Kanika, so someone has written it. Is it a bad idea to hire full-time employees now, given the uncertainty in revenue projection, and instead only rely on contract workers?
So, I don't think I would have the answer for that, because it really depends business to business and, nature of business to business. However, if it works for you that you can work with contractual employees, why not? It all depends on the kind of business you're in. However, that being said, I'm a very strong believer that contractual, full-time, whatever it is, your employees are your employees, your team members are your team members. And if you think you can build a long-term sustainable business by shortchanging people and not having the right team commitment or the right team motivation, you're not going to be able to build a very great business. I mean, that's my personal take on it, to be honest.
Right, right.
Yeah, I would agree. However, that being said, I do believe that the gig economy is going to come into its own in India on the back of this. So yes, organizations are going to look at flexibilization of workforce, especially because there is so much of uncertainty. So I would say that if you have the opportunity to work with gig workers, please go ahead and do it, because that's what will give you the flexibility to to continue your operations even if times get even tougher.
Right. So staying with you, Ryan, then someone's written in saying that I operate a small scale unit. How do I possibly undertake social distancing in my workforce?
Oh, tough, because space is going to be limited, within your premises. But again, as part of your BCP, as part of your business continuity planning, you'll have to ensure that, as people come in, so there's social distancing at the gate of your unit. You know, once they come in, you got to kind of relook at your facility, at your production line, to see what's the best that you can do. How do you keep people to some level apart, call people in smaller crews and shifts, maybe extend the time of operations, so that the work gets done, but gets done over a longer period of time, and you have less people at any one point on the site, as possible. So I think these are some of the things that you'll have to think of, but difficult to kind of fully envisage, the challenge without being there. But these are some of the things that you'll have to look at.
Right. Kanika, question to you. Someone's written in, how do you operate if absenteeism spikes?
Again, I mean, that's not something that anyone can control, but which is why I think both Ryan and I keep, going back to the same thing. HR is going to play a very important role at the end of the day. If you've got to manage your teams in a manner that they're motivated to come to work, you've got to manage your teams in a manner where they're reassured that coming to work is the right thing to do. So, again and again, I say the same thing. It's just like, in between, in our country, we saw the value of CAs rise dramatically. You're going to see the value of good HR professionals rise very dramatically, because it's going to take a lot to make sure people do turn up to work. If people are scared about their lives, it's no amount of money or any such thing can give them the gratification that they're looking for. So you've got to have people very, very motivated. At the same time, yeah, there are going to be days where you will falter, where you'll fail, and you won't be able to produce what you plan to produce or deliver the product you plan to deliver. I think as a promoter, it's also time to be easy on yourself and not keep pushing yourself to, go reach those limits. It's okay if your plan doesn't work on one day. The world's not coming to an end. And I know it's hard as a promoter, as a business owner, to accept this, but that's what's happening with all of us right now, right? And we've got to learn with it, learn it and deal with issues as they come instead of consistently using them as challenges. And the other thing I also think is very important is that it's important for all of us to get into the grassroots of each thing we're seeing happen. Like if there is an increased amount of people not turning up to work, get a sample group of people together, understand what's making them uncomfortable, why are they not turning up to work, and fix it. There is no miracle solution to every industry. There is no one size fits all formula right now.
Right. Uh, so quickly, we are completely out of time. So if I have to summarize, or Ryan, I'll ask you to summarize what is at the end of our 1 hour long discussion, one, two, three things that businesses, both manufacturing and maybe people with offices, need to keep in mind once the lockdown gets over. Top of my mind, I think expenses will increase.
Absolutely. So, absolutely. I think expenses will increase. We've got to plan for that. I would again reiterate the importance of planning so that you are clear on what action you're going to take depending on how the situation unfolds. Try and shower your people with empathy at this stage, because that's what will create that buy-in and the loyalty, and also the peer pressure eventually to get them back to work, to get them to come in and execute. And I think you've got to be open and transparent and communicate with them as well, so that they understand the situation that your business is in, and they understand that you're in it together, and you're in it together for the long haul, not just for the here and now. I think those are some of the key messages that I think we should give.
Right. Kanika, the last word for you.
I think, for what, what I've always been thinking throughout this pandemic is that, if there's more reason to come out of this victorious than to stress over it, especially for small businesses which have the agility, which have the flexibility to be agile, to pivot, to learn from what's going on. So, I think we as a nation, if we take this in our stride, amend things the way that quickly change the way we work quickly, you're only going to see great things come out of it, great people come out of it, and great teams come out of
Right. We would have loved to go on. We got a lot of questions, but sadly, we don't have the time to go through all of them. I would like to thank Ryan and Kanika for being a part of the session. We have plenty more coming up in the future. On Friday, we have a session on dealing with GST and your entire gamut of indirect taxes. So please feel free to register once we have that page out. Tomorrow, there is another team doing on the mental well-being of employees during work from home. So that's a webinar which is happening tomorrow. You will find the link somewhere on our website. And yes, I think that does it for this webinar. Thank you all for being here, and hopefully we'll all navigate through these very uncertain times with more dexterity and ease. So thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Kanika.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much,
Ryan.
Ryan.